Super wildcard weekend is wrapping up tonight with the Rams versus the Cardinals. We are here to break it down from a DFS and betting perspective and get you set for what should be a fun wrap-up to a good week of football. This is a FanDuel Live Q&A. That's right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter channels. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com. Joined here today by Josh Fewster. You can find him on Twitter at FYFJosh, of course, of Front Yard Fantasy. You've seen him here on the FanDuel YouTube page previously. He is in for Ryan Williams for today because Ryan's going to a basketball game. So Ryan, good reason not to be here. Excited to have Ryan back on with us in the very near future. But Josh, first of all, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Oh, Ryan, have a great time at your basketball game. Enjoy your time off. I'm happy I could be here talking about tonight's game. And really, like you said, I hope it's a good one. We had a couple good games this past week over the weekend, but I need more. I need more, Jim. So
I would like more, mostly because like the Saturday night game was dull. I mean, it was exciting to watch the Bills blow up because I live near Buffalo-ish. So it's fun to watch people get excited about that. It's fun to watch Tom Brady still doing Tom Brady stuff at his age. And Mahomes doing Mahomes stuff. That's also fun. But I want a close game. I want an exciting game that goes down to the wire. And I think that we could get that for today with the Rams versus the Cardinals. So, Josh, I'm glad that you're here to talk about what should be a pretty fun game. First of all, I want to hear your initial thoughts here, Rams versus Cardinals for tonight.
So I was looking through the FanDuel Sportsbook. It looks like the Cardinals are 3.5-point underdogs. The Rams are obviously at home, so they're the favorites here. The total is 49.5-point over under. I think the Rams end up winning this game, but I think it's going to be a really, really close game. We were talking about it a little bit pre-show here. I think the Rams win the game. You make me put a score on the game. I'm going to say 28-27. So I think it's going to be a close one. I would take the Cardinals with the points, and I would take the over as well here.
Okay. So we're both on the Cardinals side because I did bet the Cardinals +4 back on Thursday. So I'm going to ride with that. Not touching 3.5. Don't need to anymore. So I think we're good to let that one ride. I think that we're on the same page there. And basically what that means to me is we are both expecting a competitive game on both sides here, which brings us to the daily fantasy side of things and some questions coming in around Cooper Kupp. So let's start things off here talking about the MVP discussion over on FanDuel. If you're new to playing FanDuel for single game slates, the way things work is you get to pick one player you think would be the highest scoring player in the game. Put that player at your MVP, you get a 1.5x multiplier, and no drama is wondering, do you fade Kupp there? Do you go Kyler? Do you go Matthew Stafford? Do you go with one of the running backs? So, Josh, what about you? What is your breakdown of the MVP slot for tonight's game?
So it's got to, in my opinion, it's got to be either Kupp, Kyler, or Stafford. All right. Now you could mess around. You could play Sony Michel in there. Maybe Zach Ertz. That's too much for me. But for me, for my lineups, it's going to be one of those three guys. And you're asking, do you fade Kupp? I don't know. All Cooper Kupp has done this year is produce at a high fantasy level. He's leading the NFL in pretty much every receiving category or stat you could mention. The Cardinals are not necessarily the best passing defense in the league. Kupp is going to be in a ton of lineups, so he's going to have a very high ownership percentage. But it's difficult not to envision him being in the optimal lineup at the end of the day. So in my mind, Kupp is the safest start in a DFS slate for tonight's game. And I think he belongs in your MVP slot in a lot of leagues.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. You look at the projections here over at numberfire.com. Cooper Kupp is the second highest scorer based on projections, but you can kind of go any way because they're all three within 0.3 points of each other between Stafford, Kupp, and Murray. And it does go to what you said, where you're sticking mostly to those three guys as your MVP. I think that you mentioned Sony Michel. I think that's very interesting because I do think that there is some thought to potentially considering Michel there, depending on what you expect the workload distribution to be between him and Cam Akers. We'll talk about more about later on. Maybe if James Conner can't go, I think you could consider potentially, rolling out some Chase Edmonds in that slot as well. But we'll talk about the running backs in depth later on. As far as Cooper Kupp goes, I think the one positive thing here, if you're trying to find a reason not to fade Kupp, and I think, my primary concern here is I want to find a reason not to. The main reason not to is there is some really good value on this slate. Looking at some lower salary guys, Zach Ertz, $9,000. His salary is very low. Tyler Higbee getting good work recently, $8,500. Van, depending on the shoulder, he did pop up on the injury report on Friday and then was limited again on Saturday at $8,000. AJ Green may get some more targets here with Jalen Ramsey working the slot versus Christian Kirk. AJ Green, mentioned him. So I think that you do have some guys down here who are viable. And that to me, Josh, says I can feel comfortable putting in two of these three guys. If I go Kyler and Kupp, the two highest salary guys in the field, 9,000 left. I'm living in that Ertz range and I'm comfortable with that. So to me, I think that we can easily jam in two out of those three. Which two you go with, I don't care. Just pick two of those three and go from there. Are you as comfortable with the value as I am, which allows you to jam in two out of those top three guys?
I am 100% with you on this one, Jim. I completely agree. I am trying to get two of Kyler, Kupp, and Stafford. Now, who's going to be your MVP for this? That's the question. That's kind of the game we're playing here. For me, I'm leaning Kupp as my MVP in a lot of my lineups. And I like Stafford over. I mean, I like Kyler Murray over Stafford, even though Kyler Murray's a little bit more expensive. I like Kyler Murray's rushing ability. Like I said, he's a little bit more expensive than Stafford, but the biggest question is whether Kyler's ceiling is enough to warrant his actual price tag. Yeah, it's a difficult matchup, but I think Kyler has a great floor and a great ceiling. This is the playoffs. Kyler is going to be less concerned about staying healthy and more concerned about just winning this game. So I think he's going to be running all over the place as well. So I like having Cooper Kupp and Kyler Murray in there.
And I think that's the key you mentioned, where the playoffs do change things. We saw this with Josh Allen down the stretch. During the regular season, he basically became Lamar Jackson, effectively, from a rushing perspective over the final 5 games, carried over into that Patriots game on Saturday, too. We saw this with Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence during the college football playoffs back in the day. When things matter more, quarterbacks run more. And Kyler did run quite a bit in that Dallas game, ran a decent amount against Seattle, even though that game was for seeding. They could have still gotten the NFC West. So they were trying very hard in that game. I think the willingness to run should be there for Kyler. So to me, if I've got one single entry lineup, I will go Kyler Murray as my my MVP, with Cooper Kupp being the addition there on the other side. I think that with Van banged up, with Odell's yardage output not being that great, I would expect the usage to be concentrated on Kupp for today. So we're looking at those three guys for our MVP. Now, a question here from Rambo asking if James Conner is out. We don't know yet because he was limited in practice on Saturday, their final day of practice. Listed as questionable. Now, with the Cardinals, we never get word ahead of time what the status will be. Usually we can rely on an Adam Schefter tweet at 11:48 Eastern on Saturday night saying, hey, player X is not going to play. With the Cardinals, that has not been the case all year. So I don't think we're going to know until inactives come out whether or not James Conner will go, which is kind of a bummer, but also for single game, it doesn't matter too much. So we don't know yet, Rambo. So I want to talk to you, Josh. How are you viewing Chase Edmonds if James Conner plays? And how are you viewing Chase Edmonds if James Conner sits for tonight?
All right. And that's the whole question here. Does James Conner play or not? He didn't practice all week, but he got in that limited practice on Saturday, like you said. It does look more and more likely like he does play, if you ask my opinion. I know there's some beat writers and other people coming out and saying it looks like he's going to play. But he's banged up coming into this game regardless. Now, Conner's ownership percentage could be really low if he does end up playing, and maybe that's a way to find some value. Personally, he makes me nervous. I think there's a world where he could even play and gets a very small workload, and Chase Edmonds is really the guy handling the majority of work there. So if Conner doesn't play, I love Chase Edmonds as a play. Yes. I really like finding a way to get him in lineups. If Conner does play, it lowers my confidence a little bit, but I like getting Chase Edmonds in my lineups regardless, and I'm a little bit off of Conner personally.
Yeah, with Edmonds, he can come through even if Conner plays, just because the passing game work is so good. But I think that if he's out, then I think that Chase Edmonds is in the MVP discussion, because the 2 games without Conner this year, Edmonds, 80% snap rate. He left with a rib injury in that game, that Cowboys game, but he was very active before that. 18 carries, 6 targets in that game. The game where he was full the entire time, 16 carries, 9 targets, 127 yards, 57% red zone share. He's at 42% in the game against the Cowboys where he left early. So you're getting a featured back, and you're getting a featured back for a very low salary. So we talked before about how I want to jam in 2 out of those top 3. The equation shifter for me is if Edmonds is playing without Connor, because you can make that work. Actually, I guess at 8,000, I can make that work. I can get in, go with AJ Green and Van or something like that. But I am less stars and scrubsy if we get Chase Edmonds with no James Conner, because Edmonds will be pretty close to like a 100%-ish roster rate at that point, just because the workload is so good. So to me, if we get Edmonds with no Connor, he is at least a consideration at MVP, and he is a borderline lock for an any flex spot. If we get him without Connor, he's very much of a a rotational type option, not one I go to very often. I want to skew towards that stars and scrubs type approach, but still at least in consideration is what I would say. Connor, I don't think I would need a lot of stuff to break for me to get on him. So I think we're on the same page with that one there.
Yeah, Connor is as much touchdown upside as anyone you could name in the NFL when it comes down to it. But man, the only way I could feel good about putting him in my lineup is the coaching staff comes out and they're like, Connor's good to go. He's our starting running back.
Never do.
And they won't do that. They won't do that. So what am I even talking about here? Right.
Right.
And the one thing that sets Chase Edmonds apart, like you've mentioned a couple times, is the targets he's getting. He is so involved in the passing game. He's a great pass catcher. Kyler Murray's going to have to check the ball down a lot in this game because the Rams have a really good defense. So we're on the same page there.
Okay, so let's talk about the Kyler checkdowns, because most of the checkdowns have gone to Zach Ertz and Christian Kirk ever since the DeAndre Hopkins injury. Those guys have massive target shares. Now, the one complication here is that Kirk operates a lot from the slot. In the game they faced the Rams back on, I think it was week 4. In that game, he faced Jalen Ramsey on 43% of his routes run. Ramsey did not play in the rematch because he had COVID. So we're probably going to see a lot of Ramsey versus Kirk for tonight. I don't think that makes Kirk a bad option. What it does is it pushes me more towards Ertz being the primary pass catcher on this Rams team. $9,000, super low salary. You mentioned you like Zach Ertz. Is he your favorite non-Kyler Cardinal, assuming that James Conner plays for tonight?
He is absolutely my favorite non-Kyler Cardinal.
A really weird way to phrase that on my part.
Yeah, no, he's my favorite play out of all the Cardinals receiving options. How about that?
There we go.
He's getting a ton of targets. He kind of seems like he's been Kyler Murray's safety blanket, especially the last few weeks without DeAndre Hopkins in there. Over the last 5 games, Ertz has averaged 10 targets per game, 6.5 catches per game. He hasn't scored a touchdown in this stretch, but he is getting red zone targets. And maybe that's just something that keeps everyone from selecting him here. And that's a part of why his price is a little bit lower. If Zach Ertz does find his way into the end zone, he's going to be a great DFS play. I think the Rams can be beaten over the middle of the field. Kyler and Ertz, like I said, have developed this awesome chemistry in a very short period of time. I love stacking him with Kyler Murray. Yep,
I do too. I think that he is kind of like Edmonds, where he's a core play for me. $9,000. You mentioned the lack of touchdowns, and you cited that there is red zone work. There is 25% red zone share for Zach Ertz in the 4 games they played without DeAndre Hopkins. Hasn't scored yet, but getting a lot of yardage, 74, 54, 84. So that's going to come back later on. We talk about some props. Just keep that in mind. What are your thoughts on Christian Kirk and AJ Green here on the Cardinal side?
Honestly, I'm trying to avoid Christian Kirk. While he probably is the guy that's most guaranteed to have yards for this offense, like you mentioned, he could be followed by Jalen Ramsey. When you look at these guys, I am most nervous about Christian Kirk from a Rams perspective on defense. So I'd be probably most concerned about shutting him down, maybe putting Ramsey on him. I would rather play AJ Green at his price point. AJ Green sitting at what's his price? $8,000 compared to Christian Kirk's $11,000. I would rather play AJ Green than Christian Kirk.
Yeah. I mean, with those salaries, because again, we're talking about a stars and scrub type approach.
Yes.
Kirk doesn't fit that as well as AJ Green does. So I think that's the kind of the key driver for me. So I think that we're on the same page there, where Ertz is the one guy, AJ Green, good value saver there. Let's transition over to the Rams here. DJ's asking about if we want to do a Cooper Kupp bet of 100 plus yards and a touchdown. I want to see the odds on that, because it does depend if that one's like a boosted.
I was looking at his anytime touchdown. It was like plus 170 or something
for Cooper Kupp. Oh, it's minus 165. Okay, so there we go. So minus 165. His yardage
minus 170. I'm sorry.
Let's just let's do a same game parlay here quickly. Really, just all right. With Cooper Kupp yardage and anytime touchdown. And because his receiving yardage is right around there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we go with that. That is plus 152. It's not a bad number, DJ. It's not like the best number by any means, because 103.5 is a good number. That's a very high number. You're cutting a little close, I would say personally. Also, DJ is talking trash because Kendrick Bourne went off this weekend. DJ, I didn't celebrate the Kendrick Bourne touchdowns. I celebrated because I don't think about Kendrick Bourne for another couple months. That was why I was celebrating, because the Patriots got dusted. So Kendrick Bourne, out of my consciousness for a very long time. I'm celebrating that, and you can celebrate. Hope that you benefited from Kendrick Bourne doing well this weekend. Let's go back here to the Rams side of things. And Josh, I want to start things off with the running backs, because that's another key decision point here is, do you think that Cam Akers' role expands, or do we continue to see Sony Michel operating as the lead back? I'm asking you because I don't know. So what are your thoughts on this Rams backfield?
I don't think anyone knows for sure. You know, Cam Akers, I mean, he just tore his Achilles over the summer coming into the season. And we know that's a pretty serious injury for running backs. Now, we did see him in week 17. He got some work. He wasn't very efficient at all, but he got a couple catches. He got some carries. But I'm mostly trying to avoid Cam Akers in any of my lineups. And honestly, it's incredibly impressive that he's even out there playing. I do believe that Cam Akers, talent-wise, is the best running back on this team. Hands down. There's no doubt about it. But that's when he's healthy. That's when when he's been with the team, when he's been practicing. I don't think he gets the majority of carries or snaps for this backfield with Sony Michel playing so well lately. I mean, like, Sony Michel, in his own right, he's been getting targets. He's been looking really good. I think Sony Michel, I like playing Sony Michel. I'm staying away from Cam Akers. I think Sony Michel has guaranteed volume. I think he'll get 15 to 20 carries. And if they're winning the game, he'll get even more. He's getting decent targets, like I said, really making him game script proof, in my opinion. I don't like prioritizing him because I think he's a little expensive, but you can beat the Cardinals running the football.
Yeah, I think that looking at Michel last week, you see an 80% snap rate, you see a 39% red zone share. It's important to keep in mind the context, because early on in that game, I think it was their first drive, Cam Akers was in there on the goal line. He got a red zone touch. I think he had three total for the game. He got one early. Later in the game, when it became evident that they had to push because they were losing to the 49ers, they shifted things to being more centric around Sony Michel. I think that's an indicator of what we can expect here. Now, yes, Akers is an additional week of practice, an additional week to get ramped up. I'm still expecting maybe not an 80% snap rate from Michel, but I still think we're seeing 75 plus, and that's significant for a guy at $12,000. So that to me does translate to his being interesting for DFS. Again, not quite the optimal build we want to go with for tonight, just because he's at $12,000 kind of, there is a pretty high opportunity cost in going with him there, because the 7,000, 6,000 value play is not as appealing as the guys in the 8,000 range. But I do think that among the guys in the mid-range, talking about Kirk, Edmonds, if Connor plays, I would say Michel ranks above them. So that's where I'm at there. I think that I do want to get there. I want to talk to you, Josh, though, about the secondary Rams receivers. So not Cooper Kupp. What do you think about Odell? If we assume Van plays, where you at with him, Higbee, et cetera, et cetera? Any standouts for you relative to salary of those guys?
So I kind of lump Odell Beckham and Van Jefferson together a little bit. If Van Jefferson didn't have this injury he was currently dealing with, that kind of takes Van Jefferson out of the equation a little bit for me. So I think, but you can kind of define these guys very similarly. They're both big play threats. They're probably not getting more than 7 targets in the game, but they both have developed pretty solid chemistry with Matthew Stafford. I think you could say that about both Van Jefferson and Odell Beckham. Like I said, I would rather play Odell Beckham even at his current price over Van Jefferson because of the injury. The Cardinals are allowing the third most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And they've allowed 27 touchdowns, which is third in the league, I believe. So he's certainly a boomer bust play, Odell Beckham. But if he does boom, then you're going to be really happy having him in your lineup there.
Yeah, I think that I would also probably look at Odell, because shoulder injuries matter a lot for receivers. Like I know Anthony Miller, like he had a really rough year at the Bears a couple years ago, because like his shoulder was like he'd get a ton of targets, but it wouldn't matter because he had a rough shoulder. And so like, with us not knowing what Van's shoulder injury is, what his actual health is, I think that's a pretty legitimate concern. Otherwise, I'd have gone with Van. Kind of, I think what you were saying there, where like if there were no injury. Yeah, exactly. I think I would have gone with Van as well. I can get to Odell. I think the one thing to keep in mind with Odell is that the yardage upside has not been there with the Rams. He's been feasting on touchdowns. He's getting that because he keeps getting targets near the end zone. So it's not totally fluky, but the yardage upside has not been there. So honestly, I'm okay passing on both and going with the more top heavy approach, but I would go Odell over Van, even considering salary, just because that injury does scare me quite a bit.
There's another pass catcher I would play over both of them.
Is it Higbee?
It is Higbee.
Okay, let's party. Talk me into Higbee.
He's really more of a salary saving option compared to Odell Beckham. Like I said, I would have liked Van Jefferson a lot more. I think we both would have if he's healthy right now, but he's not. Now, a lot of people hate Higbee. I'm going to be honest with you. Just living in the fantasy community, people dislike Higbee a lot, including you, it looks like.
I lost a lot of money on this guy earlier on this year. I loved him then.
He's been playing pretty well. He's been getting solid targets. He could very easily find his way into the end zone in this game. At most, he's getting 6 or 7 targets, probably. He has a lower ceiling, but I think he has a pretty solid floor. And like I said, he has just a good opportunity to get a touchdown as a lot of these other guys. I like playing Higbee at his price point over Odell Beckham.
So if you look at the games they've played with Higbee since their bye, so since Odell became a full-time player, he's at an 18.9% target share. That's actually third on the team behind Kupp and Beckham. It's right behind Beckham. So I think that I'd agree with you. Where like the separation between Beckham and Higbee in reality is not as big as the separation of their salaries. Yeah. So like if you're looking at things from a production per dollar perspective, Higbee is a better option. And I'd agree with you. Like as much as he burned me earlier on this year, I can overlook that. I just got annoyed every time I got a touchdown last week. I was like, I had so many stupid Ram stacks, and this guy is giving me the double-barreled middle fingers in week 18, just reminding me that this is what he could have done back in week 3 or whatever it was against the Seed. I don't know, whatever it was, but like the Bucks at that time. But just not my favorite, but I'm going to go there regardless.
I also think he is going to be a lot less rostered than Odell Beckham.
I would agree with that too. I'd agree with that. I think you could convince Jay because Jay says Josh is a legend. So you've sold Jay. Hey. I think this is during the Odell discussion, but I'm going to pretend it was on the Higbee discussion. And that you sold Jay as being a Higbee guy for tonight. So good luck to you, Jay.
Do not make me the Higbee guy either. I am definitely not a Higbee guy, but I think he has some upside here. I think he has some upside.
You can be the Higbee guy if he does well tonight. If he doesn't do well, we're not going to tie you to that. I love that. Let's negotiate that. Okay. Rainbow is asking about kickers. We got Matt Gay and Matt Prater here. I think, Rambo, what this depends on is the way you see the game flowing. Like if you think the Rams win, go Gay. If you think that the Cardinals win, go Prater. That's kind of just the way it works. Also consider the way they operate with quarterbacks, because if you have Kyler Murray to MVP, that implies you think Kyler's scoring touchdowns. If they're scoring touchdowns, they're not kicking field goals. So keep that in mind too. Quarterback and kicker don't mesh that well, and consider which team you think will win. So like if you go Kupp at MVP, then I'm totally okay pairing him with Matt Gay under the assumption that the Rams are ahead and stuff like that. So those are my thoughts on kicker. Do you have any different way you view things there, Josh?
No, I'm right there with you. I completely agree. If I had to choose one of these guys, I know Matt Gay is a little bit more expensive, but it would certainly be him.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. Okay, so we've gotten consensus that you were the Higbee guy. Yeah, so congratulations.
I'm not the Higbee guy.
Congratulations to you, Josh.
Now he's gonna blow up.
They have overridden our agreement we had in place here. So you're just the Higbee guy regardless. Sorry or congrats.
Multiple people saying it now. Oh no.
I'm saying sorry or congrats. You decide.
He's gonna blow up tonight, and I'm gonna look like a genius. So I'll take it.
You just love Higbee. You know, we got all the front yard people in here making sure that it's known that Josh loves Higbee. Let's slide over here to the FanDuel Sportsbook and check out some props. Yeah, exactly. Let's check out some props for tonight. I want to hear you first, Josh. Anything standing out to you over FanDuel Sportsbook? Any value you've seen that you want to touch on for today?
Yeah, so I personally think this is going to be a quarterback display. I think the quarterbacks are going to be on display this game. I am feeling really good about both the passing yard lines for both Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford. Kyler Murray, when I checked right before the show, he was at 255.5. And I'm taking the over there. He's averaged over 270 passing yards per game when he's been playing. I know the Rams have a very good passing defense. There's no doubt about that. But Kyler just threw 383 passing yards when when he played the Rams in week 14. Kyler threw 268 passing yards when he played the Rams in week 4. Both of those numbers are above 255.5. So I'm taking the over here personally. And then I'm taking the over with Matthew Stafford's passing yards. I think it's going to be a passing showdown. Matthew Stafford's a little bit higher, 274.5. But I'm still taking the over. He averages 287 passing yards per game this season. And again, the 2 games he played the Arizona Cardinals, he got over 274.5.
Okay, so we're going over with both Kyler and Stafford. I'm hoping the Kyler one hits because if Kyler goes over, that implies there's a good chance that Zach Ertz goes over. His receiving prop is 54.5. That has actually gone up about 5 yards from what it was when I looked before. I am less enticed by it right now because that number has definitely gone up.
Yeah,
it was lower. I will say that for sure. So maybe we're going to look again.
He's projected to be the leading receiving yards leader for the Cardinals, it looks like.
Yeah, let's see what the yardage is here. They've got our number 5 is Ertz at 49. Maybe the value's gone. Okay. So I was going to talk about Ertz. We're gonna audible. We're gonna pull a Cowboys punt team unit here and pull an audible. AJ Green's at 46. That's kind of tough. Can't quite get to Kirk. I'm just going to avoid the yardage prop altogether. We're just going to say no to that and go over to the rushing props and check out Sony Michel. His rushing plus receiving yardage number was 68.5. It is still there. Thank you. Okay, we're good. The 68.5 number, I think, is very fair. Last week, the yardage is not there for Michel, and the production was not there. But this goes back to what we discussed earlier, Josh, where I think that Michel will still be the lead back for this team, despite the fact Akers has an additional week being back now. Akers, his yardage prop was 28.5. It has come down to 26.5. So clearly the sentiment on Akers is souring. That is not translated yet to Michel's rushing plus receiving yardage going up. So I think 68.5. I will take the over on that. I think it's a very fair number and ride with that. What are your thoughts? Do you think that's a little too high? Or are you okay with this number right now?
No, I actually love that. I love that. I'm going to make that bet.
Okay.
So thank you for pointing that one out to me. I like Sony Michel 68.5 because I completely agree with you. I don't think Cam Akers is going to be the guy this game. I don't think he's going to be the guy this year personally. Going into next season though, he will be. But that's not what we're talking about here. Sony Michel's the guy right now, and he's going to continue to be for this game. I'll take it.
You've also been tied to Rondale Moore. So
what? Now I'm the Rondale Moore guy.
The guy and the Rondale Moore guy. Rondale Moore's yardage prop is 16.5. That might still be too high, given that he needs roughly 6 targets. Right? Yeah, he might not play. He needs about 6 targets to get 16.5 yards typically. So as much as I love Rondale Moore, watching him shred my team in college, not quite going to get there for tonight.
He teased us so much at the beginning of the year. He had one. It was really just one big blow up game where he was highly targeted, and he kind of disappeared after that. But I love the guy's talent. But you're right. He's going to get a lot of. If he does get targets, they're going to be very close to the line of scrimmage. So you're right. He's going to need a lot of targets to succeed.
We need Rondale Freed next year. I'll slip Cliff at 20, and we'll see if we can get him on the field a bit more next year. DJ's wondering,
how does the Cam Akers line make you feel real fast? 26.5 for Cam Akers. I know it's lowered. Do you think he can reach that, even getting 20% of the snaps? Let's say.
I'm either a stay away or under. I'm definitely not going over that number.
I completely agree.
I think that. The way I think about it is if I'm getting exposure to being low on Ertz, if I'm getting a way to be low on Akers, I'm getting it via the Michel over versus the Akers under personally.
I love that.
So I think that's the way I think about it for me personally. Are you leaning towards the under on Akers?
I am leaning towards the under on Akers, but I completely agree with you. If I'm going to fade it, I'm going to fade it betting on Michel.
Okay. Final thought here. Question from DJ. Would you fade Ertz? So this comes under the assumption that Ertz is low rostered. And I think that's a fair assumption, DJ. I think that's heavily rostered. I think that's a fair assumption because the salary is $9,000. That's very low for a guy getting a 25% target share over the past 4 games. So I think that DJ's assumption here is correct, that Ertz winds up being pretty popular. For me personally, maybe it increased the incentive to go Higbee over Ertz. Maybe you just go both, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you go AJ Green as being the route. I think it's a consideration, DJ. I am not actively looking to fade him, though, because I think he's objectively undersalaried. That's where I'm at with Ertz. Josh, what about for you?
You summed it up perfectly. Ertz is undersalaried. He's got a really good price point, and that's why he's going to be heavily rostered. I like the point you made about maybe playing Higbee over him, because while I would rather play Ertz, I think Ertz is going to have a better game than Higbee. Higbee, I do not believe is going to be very high rostered. So sure, I like that. I like that kind of pivot.
Double tight ends, baby. Let's just go both, Porque no los dos.
It's been working pretty well. The tight ends have been hot this week.
That's right. Let's keep it going with Hertz plus, or with your guy Higbee plus Ertz. Josh's guy Higbee. Got to remind you.
So Ben scores for Higbee, regardless.
After he scores his third touchdown, Josh, be sure to take a victory lap on Twitter. After the third touchdown, the second one, hold on,
and put it everywhere.
After the third touchdown, though, well-deserved victory lap.
I'll play it cool.
Yeah. Act like you've been there before. Exactly. That is all that we have here. Yeah, exactly. The victory lap's got to come. That is all that we have here for today on the FanDuel Live Q&A. Josh, I want to say thank you to you for swinging by and joining me here, filling in for Ryan. Find Josh on Twitter at FYFJosh and check out all the Front Yard Fantasy guys here on the FanDuel YouTube page. Josh, enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy Zach Ertz's second touchdown just as much as his first. And hopefully I'll talk to you again here soon.
Thank you for having me, Jim. This was a lot of fun.
Josh Higbee you've been renamed. So congratulations.
Josh Higbee.
Josh Higbee. There we go. I'm on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your DFS lineups, with your bets, and just enjoy what should be a good football game for tonight. We'll talk to you once again soon. This has been the FanDuel Live Q&A.